Well, we got another guest on Super Bowl week, and it's former Michigan and NFL player and current executive director at King Sessing Heels Community Resilience Center, Tim Massaquoi. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So, Tim, you spent some of your formative high school years in the area. So, we got to ask in Super Bowl week, who's your team?
The team I'm rooting for the Super Bowl, or just my team I root for in general?
Both.
I'm going with the Birds. I'm going with the Eagles. But there's a big if, right? That's the thing. So I think overall the Eagles have a better team. I really do. I think top to bottom, across the board, they're skill wise, collectively, they're just a better team. But to beat a man, like they say, you got to beat the man, and the man or the men right now, the Chiefs. They don't get rattled. And when you talk about big time games, that's who usually wins. If you watch the Super Bowls, it's the teams that make the mistakes, right? And talent level is there. When you start turning the ball over, you started having like a lot of penalties. That to me, that's a sign of like the moment being too big. And so that the Eagles can't catch that moment too big, but because we know the Chiefs are just going to be consistent. They've been there before. They'll probably yawn at points of the game. But I think if the Eagles can overcome that and just be who they've been, not turning the ball over and just playing solid football, I actually think they'll dominate the game. I really do. I think the Chiefs, the balance is, of course, is Mahomes and the Chiefs, I would say defensive line. But beyond that, I think the Eagles have the advantage everywhere else on the field.
The other thing that concerns me, which is something I think you can speak to, is Travis Kelce and the tight end position. As a man who has played the position and then seen the position change through the years, I'm wondering if you can talk about the changing role of tight ends and how you see Travis Kelce and conversely the Eagles with the RPO and Dallas Goedert playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, before you get to Kelce, you got to honor the Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates and those guys who really removed Shannon Sharps, those guys who really made the position a receiving position, right? When I came into the league, there were the great tight ends were, Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, and I came in with Vernon Davis, right? Super athletic, really fast guy. We were in the same class. And so you just saw this need for what we call the H-back position, which was like that kind of hybrid. They could play in the backfield, they could play on the line, and they just weren't, they play, extended. And so, Kelce and the guys today have just taken that H-back position and just say they're essentially just a bigger receiver. They're a wide receiver. Some guys still, I think, like I would say George Kittle still have the inline tight end skills where the blocking is a part of it, right? So you just can't say, oh, he's in the game, he's going to catch a pass. But like Kelce just, took the game to another level. Gronkowski, those guys, they just took the receiving part of the game to another level. And even like the next level of diagram plays versus just feeling a route come open. I think that's where Kelce really has separated himself from the pack. I think historically, because he just doesn't run diagnosed routes, right? He doesn't run really scripted routes. Him and Mahomes have felt the game so much that he might have a slant, but he might just run a curl. He might just run like a hook route. And that's just feeling, that's just understanding defenses, understanding vulnerability in defenses. And he's really taken that to another level where mentally and from a football IQ, him and Mahomes are on another level. They just really are. You watch his routes, and it doesn't look like he's running a prescribed route. He just runs and he just turns and gets open.
He runs empty space, it seems like sometimes.
It's like it's interesting. It's like they've taken the complexity out of running routes and throwing the football, and it got it real simple. But that simplicity is very hard to stop and very complex because the defense is so used to, this combination is this guy's going to run here, right? but you can't say that with them. They just do whatever. And so it's beautiful to watch because I would say he's not so much more athletic than any other wide receiver, but he can get open better than almost anybody in the league. So it's pretty cool to watch when you understand that part of the game. I like watching him a lot.
But it's not just that. It seems that over the last couple decades, there's something about the tight end position that there's a communication between the great tight ends and the quarterbacks that they play with. It's Gronkowski and Brady. It's these two on the Chiefs. It's the way Kittle plays with Purdy now. And you can go on and on with it. Just seems to be that tight ends have this almost unspoken, almost telepathic ability to communicate as they're either running routes, blocking, and then shooting out. What is it about the tight end position and the relationship with the quarterback that makes it unique as opposed to the rest of the offense?
So I would say the tight end and the quarterback, from a knowledge perspective, they almost seemingly know just as much as each other does. Because the tight end has to know zones, has to know fronts, has to know blitzes, has to know, the audibles and things like that. Same as the quarterback. The O-line has to know protections and of course, your blocking schemes. Receivers, you have to know your coverages, you have to know all your audibles, things like that. You got to know a couple of blocking schemes here and there. You're just blocking the safety, the end man in line, or a corner. So the knowledge piece, I would say, has probably really, that's something that a lot of people don't talk about as far as the tight end's knowledge of knowing their plays and knowing in defensive schemes and fronts and coverages. So I think that plays a part in it where those two positions are on the same page with seeing the whole defense, understanding the whole play. And so they are on the same page. You go back to the Jason Witten years, right? Jason Witten wasn't this really athletic guy, but he was always able to get open, and Romo and whoever was his quarterback, they're able to find him. So I think the knowledge and piece because when I first got to the league, that was the hardest curve for me. Just the reading fronts, not just the regular reading from, okay, this is a 4-man front, 3-man front, or whatever, but it was the different complexities of blitzes. It was the shifts. It was and then knowing the secondary, right? Knowing who's coming and where my hot routes or where my hot spots are. And so I think that knowledge plays a big part in it, and it doesn't really get talked about because they almost simultaneously have to know the same amount of information before the play gets called.
Tim, we wanted to have you on the show less to talk about football and more to talk about what we like to talk about with athletes and coaches, which is using your platform.
Yeah.
And the place that you went to school, Michigan, obviously I have a soft spot for.
No, but you definitely not.
but you played for Lloyd Carr, who we all know the community matters to him. What was it like playing for him, and what did you learn about the responsibility of using your platform?
I think one of the really, really important lessons as far as just consistently teaching and mentoring thing that we learned, I would say I learned, and I think other guys who played for Lloyd would agree with me, was just the idea that this was one part of who you were, even though, as far as like being an athlete, being a football player, and being a student athlete as well, Lloyd Carr was really trying to develop men who would leave Michigan and go represent the school, be leaders in their homes, be leaders in their communities, and have a lot of integrity and carry themselves a certain way. And so we would, every camp, every off season, there was more life lessons and lessons about being a contributor to society, somebody who was healthy emotionally, mentally, and physically, and who aspired to be the best person they could be. There were more of those lessons than honestly within our large team meetings than it were about actual football. When we got together, when Lloyd was in front of us, he was talking about developing the whole person, developing into a man who could lead communities. And so for me, that has been something that stuck with me, even though I didn't understand it when I was younger. As far as like, why are we always talking about the mountaintop experience? Why are we showing linked chains, right? What does that mean? What does that mean to be together, to move united, to lead from the back as far as leading from the front? You know, to be somebody who carries their weight, who does their part, who does their job. Those are all the things that I really carry into, into the community that I'm in, into service. And service, something that was very important to him was being somebody who was able to serve, being somebody who was able to look out for other people. And that's what really Coach Carr talked about. That was the kind of teams we had. We didn't win a national championship every year. And we didn't win one at Michigan when I was there. But man, we left as better men. And I can truly say, I think man to man, we left as better individual men going into society, whether going further in our professional careers or going into the work career. We left as really strong men who could lead and support and be there for our community. So I think that's something I will always carry with me, because that's something that's helped me to be the person I am today.
Well, and you needed all those tools when injuries kind of halted your playing career and you had to find your own identity outside of sports. Talk about the journey to eventually finding yourself into therapy and helping others with their own challenges and working through them.
Yeah, I tell this story a lot of times. People raise their eyebrows like, huh? So when I got to Michigan, I wasn't really thinking about playing pro football. The only directive I had from my family, from my mom and my aunt at that time was like, when you go to school, that's all good, play football, but you better graduate with that degree. So I was locked in. So I was like, okay, I was told I better get my degree and focus on that. But it wasn't until my sophomore, junior year that I kind of saw the opportunity really opening up and say, hey, you can actually play these things as a career. So then my mindset shifted a little bit to, I really want to do this. I really want to, go to the NFL and have a professional career and play football for the rest of my life. And so I was able to do that, had some hiccups, had some injuries, again, leaving Michigan, but I was able to, live that dream. And then boom, 3 years later in my career, devastating knee injury, and I was done. And so I tell that story like that because my mindset, I was the type of person, when I invested something, I was all in, right? And so once I invested the idea that I was going to play football, nothing else mattered. There was no backup career. And this is every athlete, I would say, if you're trying to play, there's no backup careers really. When you decide you're going to play pro, that's all you are. That's who you are. And that's all you want to be, because that's the kind of commitment and investment it takes. And so when I had that taken away from me, it was nothing else. And I was like, who am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? Those kind of questions. And it definitely impacted my mental health, definitely impacted how I viewed myself, self-esteem, confidence. And so I really saw some help. I saw the therapist, and I was looking for a specific therapist. I was looking for a Black male therapist who was also a football player. And yeah, it wasn't happening.
Very specific request.
There's not a big directory on this.
Right? It wasn't really happening. And I was like, dang, there's none out here. And so, but I was able to find a really good therapist who helped me work some things out. And I said, well, if I had a hard time finding somebody who could relate to my experiences, I know there's other guys out there who are going to have that hard time. And so I really felt that it was my calling to become a therapist. And once I got into the career, it expanded beyond, again, not just working with pro athletes and working with football players, but just working with the community in general around mental health, mental illness, and wellness. And since I made that commitment, I haven't looked back since, but that was my experience that really kind of motivated me and propelled me into, the career that I have today.
And why don't you talk a little bit about that career and what you're doing for the community?
Yeah, so I'm the executive director of the King Stetson Hills Community Resilience Center. And our center is a center that supports victims of gun violence in Southwest Philadelphia. in 2023, we experienced one of the first ever mass shootings in Philadelphia. We experienced shootings in Philadelphia individually, but this was a mentally ill gunman. He shot 9 people, killed 5 men, including a baby as young as 2 years old at the time. Well, he shot the baby in the leg during the shooting rampage. The baby still survived. But because of that shooting, we were able to get federal funding to support, folks in the aftermath of that. It was a devastating thing that happened in Philadelphia, shook the whole city and surrounding community. And we're still working with families today, providing mental health, grief and loss counseling, some victims compensation services, and just supporting people in getting their lives back together. We still have families, it's been 1.5 years now, still trying to recover from this horrific incident that's changed their lives forever. So me and my team, we just support them any way we can. We provide mental health and wellness services, and we're just helping people try to pick the pieces up. There's folks who lost jobs, because they're just in such grief, right? There are folks who are ready to start again, but they've lost all this time. And so we just support them in any way we can. We're just whether it's just continuously listening and being an ear to talk through things, or actually providing logistical resources to help them get their lives back together. In addition to that, I do have my private practice, so I work with a couple of clients. I had to shrink it down a little bit, but I work with some former players who are on the other end of it, and their career retirement, and just processing that, some players who have been removed from the game for 10, 15, 20 years, but still have that grief of losing their career and still struggle with some identity issues and purpose things. So I work with those individuals, and also work with young kids. I love working with young kids and helping them work through some things and build some life skills to help them live a better life as well.
You mentioned the players. Jeff and I have talked a lot in the past about athletes kind of validating mental health challenges, being honest about it, so that regular people who aren't as big and tough as these athletes can be like, oh, it's okay. And the Eagles, we have a bunch of those players. We have Lane Johnson, who's very open about his mental health challenge. You have AJ Brown, who is literally at the Super Bowl at media night talking about depression and his thoughts of suicide and the friends that he had to help him get through it. Can you talk about what it means to everyday people who face these challenges when athletes are able to say, look, I go through it too?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we know in our country is that we really appreciate and adore people who do phenomenal things that don't seem humanly possible. There's got to be some type of God-given gift, right? So we appreciate that a lot, and that usually comes in the form of sports or entertainment for the most part, or really educated, like people who just have a extraordinary perspective and disposition in life, and we honor and admire that. So with that, there's an assumption that all things are great in those folks' lives, right? Pro athletes, oh, they're making all this money. Life has got to be great. Life has got to be awesome. They can't have any worries. And what these athletes have been doing, I would say over the last, I'll say maybe 10 years, is showing you like, yeah, these things are happening. I have this access and I have finances and things like that, but I'm still a human being and I'm struggling with this thing, right? I struggle with confidence. I struggle with feeling sad. I don't have and it's kind of interesting sometimes too. It's like, at the same time, it's like, well, what do you have to complain about? Right? You're this super athlete, you make all this money. Why are you complaining? And it's like, I'm still a human being. This money felt like it was the thing. This fame felt like it was the thing that was going to bring me happiness, but something else is going on and I'm not feeling that. And so I'm just appreciative of the vulnerability, because the same amount of courage and strength it takes to and ability it takes to perform as an athlete, that same amount of courage is needed to be vulnerable, right? Because if you're feeling depressed and you tell the world you're depressed, the world could dismiss your depression. They could dismiss your sadness and say, oh, you don't have anything to worry about. And you take a risk when you express that. And so I appreciate that.
Or make about it.
Yeah, because if you're dealing with being judged and then you say something that opens you up to being judged, then you kind of manifest the thing that you're working through. And so I just appreciate their bravery, and I just appreciate their openness, and because it takes strength and courage to share those very intimate things that you're going through. And hopefully the byproduct of that is more folks are starting to talk about their mental health, mental illness, and mental wellness, are starting to talk about things they struggle, because once we have that conversation, then we realize, oh, we're not the only one going through it. And that's where the healing comes in, when we say as a community or as a human being, I'm not going through this alone.
I wish we could have you on for an hour. We have so many more questions for you. We hope you'll come back. There's NIL stuff to talk about. There's all sorts of stuff. The public speaking. Yeah. We'd love to have you back anytime, but we got to end it with this. What's your prediction for the Super Bowl?
Again, it's a big if. I really believe the Eagles are the better team. I believe if they come out and they play how they've been playing, it's been dominant football because it's been solid football, right? It's just been taking care of the ball, playing style defense, running the ball, passing the ball. I just think and they're a complete team in all phases of the game. I just think they're the better team. I really do. And but you're going against the champs, and the champs don't waver this year. The champs have shown that they're ready for any situation and scenario. So that's the big if. But I'm going with the Eagles. I think the Eagles will get it done. I don't think there will be a three-peat. And I think the Eagles are going to bring the championship back to Philly.
Pat Riley's going to send you an invoice for just saying that on the radio. Tim Massaquoi, this was a blast. We really hope we can get you again. Like Jeff said, we could talk to you all day. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and good luck with everything you're doing in the community. Keep us updated and let us know how we can help too.
Thanks, Jace. Jeff. Appreciate you guys having me. Go Blue, and let's go Birds. Woo!
There we go. Have a good one, man.
Take care.
Tim, thanks a lot.